So the needs, basically, we have to look at language from all of its elements. The historical elements, the political elements, the socioeconomic elements, etc., etc. It's not just language for language. All of these elements are combined. It's like when I was mentioning her example of the Chinese teachers teaching in a Chinese style, but people wanting their own background. That doesn't necessarily work. We have to consider more closely, like, how do all the cultural elements impact the class and how the language is taught and learned. So one of the things that she was also saying is that we need to have in our academic circles discussions and discourse about the marginalization of foreign-born language instructors, so non-native speakers of English, because they should not be marginalized. There is, and as one of the other presentations that I'm going to talk about later, there's a lot of really, really wonderful things that students can and should learn from non-native English-speaking teachers, more than they can learn from their native speakers, their native-speaking teachers, right? So the idea that we really have to consider how we think about native speakers versus ourselves, and that we're all at the same level, that there's no distinction or, well, there's no level difference. What do you think about that?
When we teach colloquial language, certainly we need native speakers. And everybody says, I agree. Nobody says, we're on the same page. Everybody says, you're punished. Nobody says, you're grounded. But naturally, when you use any variant synonym, because you're a native speaker, it's powerful, it's good.
Okay, that's a good point. But there are, I think, a lot of resources that could help you to teach that without a native speaker.
But we're slow because we have to digest it ourselves.
Yes.
But yeah.
Yeah, because of course, as you said, there are some advantages in being the same. The same nationality as the person who you are teaching, because you have also gone through the process of learning English and you can help from this viewpoint. But on the other hand, it's much easier for a native speaker to find out, like, if a native speaker has learned, for example, Spanish or French before, it's a similar process just of learning another language. And it's easier for them to become a language teacher, to read some methodology or something like this, than for us to learn English so good that we will never feel, oh my God, I'm still not good enough. We will always feel that we are not good enough.
But see, that's part of the issue though. Like, what is good enough? I mean, who defines what colloquial phrases are being used? I go back to the U.S., I can communicate. I don't know all the colloquial phrases anymore. I've been gone 10 years. A lot changes, but I don't feel, when I'm teaching in the class, I don't feel like that's an issue. But what I'm hearing from you is that you feel like that might be an issue.
But you know, one of your advantages, I mean, if you're a native speaker, your phonetics, your utterance. I had an American teacher in my class, and he never corrected my students. And students made a lot of mistakes. And when I asked him why not, he said, I could not understand them, not because of their grammar, but because of their utterance, how they pronounce sentences. And for us to imitate you, because our students repeat, our melody repeat, our phonetics, and so on and so on. And it's not perfect. It's not even not perfect. Sometimes it's wrong.
Okay. when you go into that specific example, I would probably agree that it is helpful. But one of the things that you said is that the native speaker didn't actually do anything. So how is that helpful to the students? Right? Because they have to be trained to be able to teach phonetics, to recognize the errors, to hear them, and to actually teach the students where their tongue should be, or where, what part, is it voiced or voiceless, etc. So I agree and I disagree, because I think that for us, maybe we have to also look at, again, what is the standard to sound like a native speaker? That's something that's been set up for you by native speakers. Is that fair? No. Look at SLA research. What does SLA research say about pronunciation and fluency? Basically, after a certain time period, if you haven't started learning, good luck. Right? Because there's an optimal period for language learning and for getting the correct pronunciation, correct being native speaker-like. But if they are, so the example you gave was extreme because the students were not able to produce the utterances, the sounds that would make them be understood, right? They didn't have that. But a lot of students that I've heard are okay, they may have an accent, but who am I to say the point is, again, the communication. If they can speak in English and be understood, that's communication. You don't need a native speaker for that. I've met a lot of people throughout my travels who never met native speakers, and their English, the pronunciation, the sounds, syllable structures, etc., were okay.
But I had a private student, a girl about 22, 23, and she asked me to teach her English because she got acquainted with an American guy, and they're supposed to be a family. And it took us maybe 2 months. I taught her the ABC of English, and then we did not see each other maybe for half a year. And later I came across her suddenly, and her English was better than mine, because I call it pillow method. Because that American guy and that our Ukrainian lady, they became like a couple, and they talk naturally. She talked to a native speaker, she listened to him, and her English was without grammar, without that scientific stuff, but it was fluent, perfect according to pronunciation, and I was surprised with my studying and knowing nothing, and her enjoying and gained a lot. I don't know.
Okay, but we have to be careful about these because, first of all, we don't know if she was a really good language learner anyway. Because you could have had the same experience with me if I were the Ukrainian girl and there was an American guy, and I would be like, you need to speak Ukrainian. I can't learn English. And his Ukrainian may have gotten really good. So there's that. We do have to remember that some people really are talented in languages. So it's not fair to compare on that way. But again, it goes back to the same question is, what is the standard English, and why, just because she sounds differently and maybe speaks a little bit faster or whatever, why would you assume that she's more fluent than you are?
And feelings, when you feel the language because it's the mother tongue. Not you use it artificially, correctly, but artificial, but more with feelings. For example, my wife speaks Russian a lot with me, but when we have an argument, it's only Ukrainian, or Russian with Ukrainian accent. And she repeats my mother-in-law. She reminds.
That's hilarious. So I think, but actually what you're seeing here is really awesome because this is exactly the debate that's going on, right? It's like these are, a lot of what you're saying is a lot of what we've been taught by the culture of English to expect, and by the culture of linguistics to expect about, native speakers versus non-native speakers and the feeling behind it. But I think the point of what she is saying is, why are they learning English? Is it because they need to have the pillow talk and have the emotions and have the expression? Or is it because they need to have a business transaction and then be done? Right? So you don't need a native speaker in order to teach them to have the business interaction. You don't want emotions in a business interaction, and then be done with it. So I really appreciate your comments, because I think that a lot of us, including myself, would agree with much of what you've said. But I think her point was basically, what's the purpose? Why are we actually teaching them? How are they going to use it? And are we teaching them in a way that's the most effective? Because they don't need to sound like a native speaker. They need to sound in a way that is understandable to others so that they can communicate their meaning. Yeah.
Say one more.